Could you hand me a microphone?
Does it say on?
Yeah.
That's okay. This is all we had to do. Oh, street safe. Okay, awesome. We pass it on. Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Curriculum Committee meeting for September 27th, 2018. I would like to call this meeting to order, and we'll begin with approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair, I have two slight changes to the agenda. I believe item 4, street safe driving program, we're also going to look information, also possible approval to move on for consideration by the full board. And item number 7, Miller's Crew update, that will also be informational as well as approval, possible approval for action by the full board. Okay.
Any other changes or comments? Okay. All those who approve the amendments to this agenda say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to the curriculum meeting minutes. I trust everyone has read through those for August 30th. I had some just very minor corrections that Ms. Rowland already has, and I think you have a copy of it.
Yes.
Any other corrections?
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, we'll have the UCLA program update.
Yes, last year we talked about UCLA and even last month about Union County Learning Academy, and what that program was is really looking at a program for students that aren't being as successful as both the student and the parent, as well as Union County Public Schools would like them to be, and this alternative program for students that aren't real discipline issues or anything like that. And so what we've done, I just wanted to give everyone just some information on the progress that we're making towards that goal of having this program at least presentable by the spring to this committee and as well as the full board as needed. And so at this point, we have met as a group, Mr. Baisden, Dr. Baisden, myself, Dr. Healy, and Miss Batchelor, who is the principal at South Providence School, who has experience working with a similar program in Stanley County. She's a valuable resource for us in looking at this type of program. So we did meet, but prior to getting in that, we've also, I want to give you a couple of updates on just South Providence as a whole. And I know we talked about AYN, Alexander Youth Network, and the day treatment over there. And there's a lot of good things happening this school year. We've enhanced that instructional program for our students that are in the day treatment, getting more of our staff to work with those students during the school day to meet their core curriculum needs, as well as obviously the support that AYN provides. We've improved their facilities over there. South Providence staff in general has been just phenomenal working through this process in reorganizing their master schedule and curriculum and where everybody is. So we've doubled the space for AYN to give them more space as well. And then, of course, we have worked with our entire school district to support the students that are in, not only in day treatment, but at South Providence as a whole as well, because we are now seeing principals from the homeschool of these students going to visit the students both at South Providence and in the day treatment to continue to make that connection with the students. The theory is, and the idea is, to support those students in transitioning in and out of their homeschool into South Providence School, and that is helping.
That's
It builds that connection, and it doesn't. We don't lose track of the students anymore.
Could I ask you, do you, off the top of your head, do you know the approximate population figures at South Providence right now?
I do not know that, but I can get that information to you. That'd be easy to get to you, that population size right now.
Day treatment through Alexander, is that considered a, is that considered a part of South Providence, so that you're technically a South Providence student if you're in the day treatment program?
Well, they're housed at South Providence, and we do use South Providence teaching staff to support them. So to say that they're fully South Providence, it's a partnership.
I may be wrong. I think the students are still coded or zoned or go to their home school.
Okay.
They're just being served at another alternative location. We
They
can
can
verify
meet
that
their
for
needs.
you.
Yeah.
Right. We can verify that for you. But and I know Mr. McGraw, I've met with him recently. I think he has the updated numbers. I just can't remember off the top of my head what they are.
Just an email would be fine.
And I think the numbers for this program is small.
It
Yes.
is.
It's
Yeah.
like less than 5, I think, right
Yeah.
now.
Oh, okay.
Good.
I was thinking
Good.
10 or 12, but yeah,
That's
the day treatment.
Is that middle and high?
Middle and
Day
high.
treatment?
When you say AYN, what does that stand for?
Alexander
Alexander
Youth
Youth.
Network. I'm
Okay.
sorry, that's the
Thank
group
you.
that does our day treatment.
Thank you.
And then looking at South Providence as in general, the alternative school, Michelle Morris, they have really helped with the suspension process of what that looks like in our school and clarified that. And they've done a really good job of streamlining what that process is, because it's, it is difficult. You want to support, always want to support the student and all students. So determining what students go to South Providence versus what students don't is always a tricky process. And they really have done a good job. I think the principals at the homeschools are very satisfied. I think the parents of students that are being placed there are satisfied with the process that is put in place by Mr. McGraw. So I just want to say kudos to him and Michelle Morris of working through that process of what it is, what constitutes being placed at South Providence School, and looking at all of those different nuances that would go into making such a decision of placing a student. Also, we have embedded more face-to-face instruction, as well as consistent ongoing structure for our SEL support at South Providence School. And so they have increased not only the instruction in the classroom, but also work to increase time on task with our SEL support that is over there to really
Social workers.
I'm sorry. Yeah, our social emotional learning that is going on. So with that process that we have done system wide in our school system, we've also looked at South Providence to increase that support as well. And then we're also kind of looking at going back, kind of getting into UCLA, Union County Learning Academy, and looking at a screening process. Yes, it is going to be application based, and this is going to be separate now from the traditional long-term suspended student at South Providence. This is for, once again, students that are sort of struggling to find their place in traditional school, and this is really an innovative concept. And so we have worked on the planning steps of making this come to fruition for the 2018-19 or 2019-20 school year. Well, what is the eligibility? Application, and this is where Ms. Batchelor has used application for a program that she ran in Stanley County that is very similar to what our concept is. And so she will be instrumental in what does the application look like? What are we looking for in students that would apply and be accepted into that program? Jumping down to like transportation. Well, transportation is really going to depend on the location. And location is a big issue on, okay, where do we want it? It's always, anytime we start a new program, you want to make sure it's accessible to as many students as possible, and location is a part of that. Centrally located is ideal, but at the same time, South Providence has so many resources available to it that we also can't pass up. And that's teaching staff, that's SEL support, that's the counseling support, the administrative, who are trained to work with students who may struggle to fit into a traditional program. Even though this is not per se that what in our minds was South Providence School, all right, and the students that were going there, they still have a staff that is trained in supporting those students. So we threw around ideas that, well, what if the students were able to get their core instruction? You know, we still have to teach the standards and the students still have to earn credit for graduation. What if we did something like a half a day at South Providence, and that way they would have access to SEL support if needed. They'd have access to the counseling support that would be needed, and then spend the rest of the day out into the field. And the field means we have all of these programs in all of our schools through CTE. And what if we were doing a PBL program on green energy? Well, we know that Parkwood High School has a staff that is trained in CTE employees that, what if we bought out their planning period? All right, and then that instructor with their talent and expertise could work with this cohort of students on a problem-based learning approach that embeds green energy and what this would look like for Union County as a whole. And the whole idea is this is a problem-based learning approach academy that we're trying to create for students. We have so many different academies throughout the school system as well, and we would look at possibly a 6-week problem-based learning approach. And so every 6 weeks, the problem changes. And then we might use a different academy someplace else to have that person, whatever that academy is, buy out that planning period and have them work with our students. We're working with Robert
And possibly
Filter.
go to a different
Yes.
high school?
The whole school
Automotive
system
and
is
Forest
open,
Hills.
on what that problem is, because the expertise is spread out throughout Union County Public Schools that could really help these students and grab that concept that we're trying to get at. And like, this is all in theory and ideas of how could we best use the resources that we have in Union County Public Schools and the knowledge that we have to bring to students who, for lack of a better term, struggle the most in our schools, and really connecting them with all of Union County Public Schools. And
That are more hands-on learners,
Yes, ma'am.
not what we identified as, sit and get. They
the sit and
need
get
more
doesn't work.
interaction.
Yes,
I believe Ms.
So
Sturtevant.
will that staff member be compensated?
Yes, ma'am. If we buy out a planning period, typically that's a planning period for a teacher runs anywhere between $5,000 and $7,000. It just depends on the number of years and what that teacher is making. That's usually what it would cost. As a principal, I bought out planning periods all the time, just to make the master schedule work and trying to bring in unique programs into the school. And I would talk to a teacher and they say, yes, I'll be glad to spend my planning time after school and give up the planning period during the day. And so that's usually how it would work.
What kind of population do you envision being part of this program the first year?
I think the first year we're going to look, it's going to be fairly small. I would like to see it be successful off the ground. And so a cohort of 20 or so to start off, or less, absolutely, just to make sure it's successful and we learn from any mistakes that we might make in planning and in organizing it. If you have a smaller number, it's easier to adjust as needed during the time frame.
One thing we could take a look at as well is, because you all know I'm kind of big on doing pilots, as Brad had said, to, then figure out what did you learn, what do we need to fix. And we could even look at 2 entry points from an application standpoint. You could look at, you apply for this, during the spring of this coming year for fall of next year.
Fall admission.
You cap it at, 15 to 20 kids based on your interest, run it the first semester, and then you could have a second application window for the second semester if we felt like we were heading down the right path. And you could have a January one for a second semester of kids. So all of this are just ideas. And again, as Dr. Breedlove said, we'll come back to you with the full plan and details in the spring, but we did want to come back and let you know kind of where we were.
So I do have a small recommendation to while you're still working on all the different theories. Okay. So parents, when they move into Union County and they start running reports and looking at, numbers and stuff, would it be possible to consider some name changes? Everyone refers to South Providence, but could we consider something like UCLA at South Providence, or AYN at South Providence? Maybe, just to kind of separate the different programming so that parents will understand that this is not South Providence, that there's different programming.
There might be a stigma of saying that to be part of this program, your child's going to be going to South Providence.
We can look into
misconception.
Just take that into consideration, because when people are moving into the area, for your child to go to UCLA or a child to have special needs and need to go to AYN is very different than someone that's had discipline problems and was forcibly sent to South Providence. And I think that would separate some understanding maybe for our community and the students that would want to be part of UCLA.
Part of the research we'll need to do, we'll definitely take that under consideration, is try to figure out from the state if we wanted to establish a new school, almost like a school within a school model, and give UCLA their own school ID number, their own web page, their own, and you could say at South Providence, UCLA at South, or just say Union County Learning Academy.
Will there be any copyright issues with UCLA or anything?
We would have to stay away from a logo of that sort of thing, but the acronym I don't think is.
But I do think the name and separating, the potential for this program, I think the concept is very needed, especially with the movement towards vocational trades and the understanding that parents are starting to see not every child needs to go to college. Maybe they need to go to community college, certifications, vocational trades. So I think this has great potential, but I think we definitely need to look at the name.
I agree. I agree that this could have great potential because there are kids that are good with their hands, but difficult with what you might call, back in my day, book learning. But the light bulb goes on when you start to mix the two together, how they see the math works when you're in auto mechanics or masonry or electrical work, HVAC. It kind of brings everything together. I also have another comment, since we're talking about South Providence, and this is for Dr. Houlihan more than Dr. Breedlove. I think we are going to have to, if we're going to encompass UCLA at South Providence, I think we need to have a long-term vision for what we're going to do with that physical building. I mean, they have a gym with no air conditioning. They have ceiling fans. They have window air conditioners. The building's from the, 30s or 40s. If we're going to focus on these programs at that location, I think long-term we're going to have some kind of, are we going to sink a bunch of money into it? We're going to seek another location. We need to be thinking about that.
And facilities has been talking about that. Even in the last budget cycle, when we were putting together the CIP, we were having those conversations.
Mr. Strickland was here, but that is on his radar. They're looking at that as a facility amongst other facilities that are older and trying to determine kind of future plans for that.
Dr. Houlihan and or Dr. Breelove, can you just reconfirm that South Providence is not a bad school, right? Can you share that with our
that is
listeners?
correct. And going out there, every day that I've been out there, there is a lot of fantastic work being done with the teachers and the staff.
Exactly.
Right. Yes,
and I
ma'am.
think when they added
Perception is not reality.
was it auto mechanics?
Small
or
engine
small
repairs.
repair.
Small engine
repairs?
Mhm.
That was a huge success.
Yeah.
When that was added, and drew a lot of attention out at South Providence. So
They're doing great things,
Mhm.
and we have a fantastic new principal there, and she's really doing a rock star job. I mean, I was there within her first week, and she's high-fiving the kids and knows their names and building relationships. And I would encourage you to go take a look
I need
at
to
it
go
and what they're
visit
doing
out there
and to meet
again.
her.
I mean, and it's successful enough. It should be said that kids want to stay and graduate there too. They don't necessarily want to go back to their home school, so they
Exactly
always
right.
have a pretty good graduation class.
You're exactly right. Yes, ma'am.
We'll come back to you in the spring with another update.
Excellent.
Okay, so that will bring us to Street Safe Driving Program update.
All right, talking about other programs, Street Safe is one such other program that we are looking to bring to Union County Public Schools. And here to talk about that is Ms. Treywick, and she has some updates for that program.
Morning.
Good morning.
At the last curriculum meeting, there were some additional questions, and so I've looked for some sites. I talked with Mr. Strickland about additional sites that would be good, that would accommodate the parking lot especially, and he said Piedmont High School and Porter Ridge and for one session, and Cuthbertson High School for another session. This was based on construction and things like that as well that were happening at the school. So the two sites, after Mr. Lovell from Street Safe looked at it, he went with Cuthbertson High School and Piedmont High School. So, and then I asked each school what Saturday is available for them with no other event happening so that we could use it. And November 3rd for Cuthbertson High and February 23rd for Piedmont High School.
I'm sorry, November 3rd, and then Piedmont,
February 23rd.
February 23rd. Okay.
Mr. Breelove, do you want me to distribute those?
They are
Oh, okay, great, fantastic. And then you asked, Ms. Merrill, you asked about the contract, seeing the sample contract. They don't have a contract per se. Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry. They don't have a contract per se, but they are able to create anything that the district needs on paper. And so I know that Ms. Merrill and Mr. Strickland, I'm sorry, Ms. Morris and Mr. Strickland are looking at the facility use agreement that we currently have and may make some adaptations for this specific event.
Great.
And then we were worried, or a component of it was that it would be the district's responsibility to pay for the facility use. But we also realized that the driver's ed instructors need continuing ed professional development. So we saw this as an opportunity to be able to do, for Street Safe to offer in-kind services by meeting this professional development opportunity. So that would, in essence, waive, if everybody's in agreement, waive with the fee. So we would only need the compensation for the personnel who's opening and closing and supervising the building.
Okay, good.
And so how much does that amount to?
Minimal.
Mark even said you may not have to, there may be a custodian that can open and close hasn't met their hour requirement, and it may be within the workday.
Do we, from what I understand, all the staff, the drivers, the instructors, et cetera, are volunteer. They bring in volunteers from law enforcement as well. So you're not looking at a paid staff for the event?
No, sir. My understanding is that it's $5,500 in labor and in materials and
Okay.
cars and things like that they cover. And that's why they asked us to cover the facility fee.
Okay. So you're not talking for an appropriation from UCPS to put on these two events?
Correct, nothing.
Okay. Have you locked in those dates with Street Safe? So you're ready to go?
I've told them, and February 23rd looks really good. And Mr. Lovell was excited about November 3rd as well. But then he called me back and is a little concerned that there's not 6 weeks in between, because they would like 6 weeks to advertise. But it still seems doable.
Okay. So would it be appropriate for this committee to endorse moving forward tentatively with those dates? So, and take it to the full board next Tuesday, so you're ready to go. And then if there's a little adjustments in the dates needed, you do what you need to do?
Yes, sir.
That appropriate? All right. I'll offer that motion that we move forward with Street Safe events tentatively scheduled for November 3rd, 2018 at Cuthbertson High School parking lot, and February 23rd, 2019 at Piedmont High School. I'll offer that motion.
Okay, now that we have a second, I had another question.
Please.
Have we or they determined, are they going to charge between $20 and $30? Do we need to help make a recommendation, or are they just going to pick that on their own?
They will take our feedback. However, it's usually been $30.
Okay.
And then if
I would agree.
if there is a financial situation, they are willing to scholarship. We
Okay.
just need to
So
provide.
I
that
didn't know if
information.
you needed that feedback from our committee to take to them, but I would agree with the $30.
And it's more for it to stop no shows.
Exactly, on a Saturday morning.
Right.
Exactly.
Especially if it's pretty. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes 4-0.
I would just ask Ms. Trewick, if those dates for some reason do change, just let this committee know.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm assuming you're going to work with Tahira and our staff to do maximum publication and publicity for these events, along with the Street Safe folks, through all the local media and schools and everything else.
Yes, sir. They provide us all of the material, and they want it saturated so that the class is full.
Have you had a chance, or I assume not because we haven't formalized this, can we reach out to the district attorney's office and the sheriff's office and local law, other law enforcement, so that they have a chance to observe the program? Because I understand, if I understand it correctly, part of the long-term success of this program is for youthful offenders, not just students in our driver ed program or recent graduates of driver ed, but also younger people out in the community to have access to this program or be recommended to this program through law enforcement. So can we make sure that they are all up to speed on what we're doing and invited?
Yes, sir. I'll ask Mr. McCraw to assist with that.
Great, great.
I have a question. Gary, can you define local media?
Anybody that'll carry it. I'm sure Tyra has all her sources. She goes to, I'm sure, all the TV stations, radio stations, newspapers.
Is that appropriate?
Yeah.
So when we share information like that, social media is probably our most popular vehicle for this. We reach way more people with that. But we also share with the local media, including our local newspapers, the Inquirer Journal, Union County Weekly. And we have also some community groups that receive our press releases and emails as well. So it will be saturated.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this.
Great job. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to House Bill 986 update.
Okay, our last committee meeting, we looked at House Bill 986 and some of the things that were going on. And one of the requests from this committee was for us to go back and try and bring more consistency to what we're doing across the district with House Bill 986, which, just to remind everyone, is a law that says that any student scoring a level 5 must be placed in advanced math. And we determined that that was very clear on what happens at middle school and what happens at high school. What is not clear is what happens at the elementary. And that's why we got a lot of the inconsistencies across the board. And so there has been a lot of work that has been done, plans made, and action taken already. And Dr. Crawford is here to talk about action that has plans that were made and actions that have been taken since then.
Before Dr. Crawford says, I will just remind the committee what we're struggling with is the same thing that every school system across the state is struggling with, is trying to figure this out. And to be honest, we're kind of building the plane as we fly it. Sure. And so what I've asked staff to kind of think about is short term this year, what can we do to get greater consistency given the dynamics of every building, and then coming back to this committee for a more long-term solution, perhaps in the spring, that may or may not have budget implications and so on. So Dr. Crawford.
So I want to start by just outlining the details of our short-term plan, which again, the short-term plan takes us through the end of this year. And then I'll discuss the details of our long-term plan. So the first step that we took was at our last principals meeting, we felt that it was important to engage and begin some dialogue with our principals around what is, how do we define advanced math? And so we took their feedback, we took those conversations that we had to, determine what our next step is. So one of the things that, was really consistent in the conversations that principals had was that advanced math should be where we're taking students deeper, much deeper. And so problem solving was a big consistency. When we talk about what is advanced math, we need to teach students how can they develop those deep problem solving skills. So one of the things of the Singapore curriculum is it's very strong in problem solving. And one way that they approach this is through model drawing. So we found a course and we've reached out to all 30 elementary schools, and we have asked for principals to submit a name of a 4th grade teacher and a 5th grade teacher from every elementary school. And we're going to pay for them to take a course in this model drawing. Because again, that's one of the strongest components of Singapore math. And we know that through model drawing and problem solving, that's where you get much deeper level thinking. And that's where students are then able to really apply what they are learning. So it is a 6-week course. And so we are finalizing those names, and we're getting the teachers registered, and it starts October 17th, and we'll go through 6 weeks.
And they're getting certified in Singapore math.
It's
or
not a
program
certificate
within Singapore.
Yes, in the model drawing,
Okay,
in the
got it.
model drawing component. And I have reached out to some instructional coaches. They'll be taking the course as well. I even signed up. I'm going to be taking that course as well. So so that gives us, a really good initial plan for this short term and long term. So the idea of this course is that we will have teachers who have gone through that training, and then they can then share with colleagues. Actually, some schools have said, well, I want more train. So can I pay for it out of my funds? And certainly the answer is yes. So, but the goal is that the teachers that are going through that training will share with their colleagues, and they'll begin to use this within their classrooms. And so part of the short-term plan, that is step number 1.
Okay.
But step number 2 is that we are going to create some resources that get students to think at a much deeper level and exposes them more to the application of their learning. So we are going to keep with the pacing of our current curriculum guides, and we're going to create what I'm just calling an extension curriculum, where the teachers, whatever structure, because remember when we met last time, we talked about how schools have different structures. So whatever structure is in place, the teachers will have that extended curriculum that they can use for those level 5 students. And a big part of it is going to be that the model drawing.
So
from that
basically,
Singapore
the short
math.
term is no matter the elementary school, we're exposing kids to the same consistent curriculum as we
Right.
defined advanced math. And I think that will be a big help in increasing the consistency from school to school.
Okay, but the question I have is the mechanics of implementation of this. Because, excuse me, I go back to the way I'm seeing it, the inconsistency. There are seats in certain schools for AIG classes, so that's being able to address that. And if now we're encompassing the Singapore math drawing into the AIG class, fine. But are we somehow making arrangements for what kind of changes in the classroom? In other words, are you still pulling aside a small group inside the mainstream class and they are learning Singapore math drawing, and then you have the rest of the class in the mainstream classroom that is learning the traditional math methods? So again, you're hopping back to the teacher having to implement something over here, different curriculum over here for this group. You have the mainstream class, and then how are you going to test everybody? If somebody is over here on Singapore math drawing and the rest of the class is doing the traditional methods, then you got two different tests, you got two different tracks, all with one teacher. And to me, that's where the issue is. I get a different curriculum for those students. I'm concerned about the mechanics of how that's being done or planned to be done.
So,
Pardon me.
So that is why we felt that it was important to stay within the pacing of the pacing of our math curriculum. So within a particular unit, it's a 6-week unit.
Right.
Whatever standards we're covering, the teachers are still covering those same standards with their level 5 kids, but
Right.
they have different resources that they're pulling from. So it's not like they're having to teach 2 different math lessons. They're still working within the standards that should be taught within that unit, and then they are extending the learning for those
Right.
level 5 students. And within a classroom, a teacher pulls groups all the time, whether it's, to reteach something for those students who didn't get it, or it's to extend. So it's a natural process that occurs, but what we're supporting teachers with is the resources to ensure that those level 5 students are getting an extension rather than just the whole class instruction.
Okay, let me ask my question this way. If you're going to have a group of students that are going to learn the Singapore math drawing method, why don't you segment those on the, let's take it 5th grade. You got 4 5th grade classes in a school. Why don't you pull the kids out into a segmented class, their own class at math time? They all go to Mrs. Jones's room because they're level 5s. They're not being pulled out for AIG, but they're level 5s. So they're getting this Singapore math drawing instruction along with the regular curriculum. They're in their own class. The other 3 classes in that grade level are going the traditional routes, so that you have one teacher who can specialize in the Singapore math drawing, teaching those kids, rather than asking every one of the 4 teachers to learn enough to be able to do that as well as the traditional math. Does that make sense?
It does. You know, and maybe that is something that, you know, we can really look at for our long-term plan. But currently, schools already have structures in place. And so our goal for the short-term plan is to make sure that we are creating a consistent curriculum that teachers can use no matter what the structure is. And it's going to be more than just the Singapore model drawing. It's going to be more than that. You know, we're going to embed many more resources for the teachers to use. And you're right. I mean, we can't just say, okay, here's your curriculum. We've done our job. But a big part, and this is what we always do, a big part of when we develop curriculum, we've got to have professional development on it. And so part of this timeline and this process in our short-term plan is that our instructional coaches will go to the schools and, you know, really provide the professional development about here are the resources, here's how we can use them. And within your current structure, how can you, when do you, as a teacher, provide this extended curriculum? What would it look like? And so that would be part of the professional development that the coaches would provide so that, you know, teachers have a plan and we're ensuring that the students are getting this curriculum.
Okay. Then under this structure, as you envision it, it's test and quiz time. So you're going to have to do 2 different tests because you're going to have to test these kids that are doing the advanced and the Singapore math drawing and whatever additional curriculum. You're going to have to test them to see that they're doing that. And you're going to have a mainstream test for everybody who's on the I call it regular curriculum. I'm sure that's not the right, but the traditional curriculum. So you're building in the need, if you go down this path, of having to do 2 tracks of testing in order to have a realistic evaluation of the kids absorbing the concepts, right?
Do you agree or disagree? Will the classroom be taking the same tests or not?
Well,
what do you envision?
Here's what I envision, because we're teaching the standards, you know, so whether you're on the extended curriculum or you're, you know, you're level 5 or you're not, we're assessing the standards. But I think the differentiation would be that for those level 5 students, that their assessment would require more of those higher level. So if you think of an EOG, there's different levels of questioning, right? There's the easier ones, which are level 1s. Right. There's a level 2 question 3. So the level 5 students, their questions would be more of your level 4 and 5 type questioning.
Perhaps the class is all taking the same test, but the level 5 students might get 5 extra questions at the bottom.
Yes, and those higher level questions. So see, you're still assessing the same standards, but you are providing higher level questioning for those students. Exactly.
So I want to say, first off, I commend you. I really like this idea, this proposal for sending 60 teachers and the instructional coaches to the 6-week course. Will they have to take is it Monday through Friday, and will we need subs to cover their classes?
So it's all online. But part of our plan is that, you know, if it's 6 weeks and maybe every 2 weeks, we want to offer an opportunity for everyone to come together and we can have dialogue around that. So it's kind of creating that face-to-face component. But it's a 6-week online course, and there are basically two sessions per week.
So I love this idea. I think this is great. Will those teachers earn their professional development credit that they need by doing this?
Absolutely.
So it won't be in addition to their other requirements.
No. Right. So they won't get a stipend for it, but they will get CE.
Their credit for it.
Credit.
Yes. So so when the summer months roll around or whatever, they've got theirs taken care of.
Right.
Okay. So I wanted to know, do you know the approximate cost per teacher to take this 6-week class?
It's $149.
Okay. Do we have the budget to cover this
we
for
gonna-
60 plus? We have this all
We do.
awesome.
Mhm.
And once this is complete, once they've all received their certification from this 6-week course, do you foresee in the long-term plan that you begin to utilize those instructional coaches to maybe next year offer during the half days, professional development, to rotate clusters and expose more teachers to what they've learned?
Absolutely. That was a big reason why I wanted coaches. Well, first of all, to support the teachers in the building, but then also that we could provide, professional development. So like at our district kickoff, we could have some sessions on that.
We need to look at the summer as well. So look
Right,
at, what
right.
can
We
we
could-
do to front load this for teachers during
And,
the summer?
and then, I think about the half days. I think this might be really exciting for other teachers to be exposed to this.
Mhm.
And then, when, heaven forbid, when we lose teachers that might have the certification, we have a pool ready to get their certification.
Mhm.
Okay.
So our short term, we're going to have some resources available for our teachers November 1st. And that will get them, they'll be in Unit 2. And so that will give them some resources to finish out Unit 2. So our goal is to have our coaches to work on this extended curriculum and have it complete by January. But we will have it ready and available for teachers to start using November 1st. So we'll continue to develop that, but we'll always be ahead of them. And so we plan to have this completed by January. Yes, for the
And
rest of
October
the year.
17th, you'll have the 2 names from each elementary to
Yes.
begin
Two
this
teachers.
course.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
First of all, let me say, so just so everybody understands, this law was passed at the end of June, dumped in our laps. And I don't know what the percentage is, but I do know a lot of school systems around this state are sitting back and doing nothing. And our team is attempting to take this head on without a full summer to prepare and guidance from anywhere. I don't imagine DPI is giving you a whole
With no additional funding.
with no additional.
Yeah, I was
okay,
gonna
I
say
didn't
the
want to say that, but
unfunded
I'll let you say.
mandate.
Yeah. So I want to commend everybody for being willing to pick up this challenge. And I'm going to give you my reservations, as you probably already picked up. We do segmentation similar to this in middle school for math aptitude, with reading as well. All I'm saying is, and this may be the long-term situation, is to bring that down to the elementary school level in order to not only comply with the law, but better meet the students' needs. And plus, that gives our staff the ability to focus. So that 5th grade teacher that is going through this training, she's teaching all the 5th graders, not trying to teach the other 3 how to implement it. See, so we're able to focus. And I think that is an appropriate longer term.
And I'll just add, we understand what you're saying.
Okay.
In elementary school, we call it departmentalization.
Okay.
And
Okay.
when I was an elementary principal, we did that, but we actually started in first grade all the way through
Yeah.
5th, where kids are rotating and having, so you may have one teacher on that team teaching 3 different sets of kids. We have some schools right now that are doing that, and they could possibly fit this in. Some schools are not. It depends on your master schedule. And it depends on the number of kids that you have, because you certainly don't want to overload the additional teachers. Making that kind of a change, Mr. Sides, right now is not possible.
Right.
But I think
get it.
mid-year, when you start a new semester and or next year, is something that we can work with principals on. It's easier to make that kind of an adjustment when you come back to school after the winter break, as opposed to in the middle of the semester, where we can.
And in elementary schools, it
You-
may be a challenge.
Yeah, and your
to
master schedule in
disrupt-
elementary is
yeah.
pretty much set for the year.
Mhm.
So
Well, they're going to be doing it in middle school, so you might as well get them used to it, at least on some certain level. You hit on something that I want to highlight. You said some schools are doing it and some aren't. That's another discussion for another day, but I don't like inconsistency if somebody's doing it one way and somebody's doing it a different way. We need to find out the best way and then make sure everybody's doing it that way. No cowboy in it.
But our goal is consistency with the curriculum, regardless of the structure.
And I would encourage, as you continue on with this work on this program, that you're also including teachers' opinion. There are troops on the front lines that have got to make this happen. Need to be, no offense to the principals, but I want somebody that's in the classroom saying, hey, this won't work because of this, or maybe we ought to try this because it works in my classroom.
That's partly why I think the intent with, maybe every other week, trying to get these teachers together to have these kinds of dialogues and feedback sessions. That's part of that discussion.
I think this is a great first step, and I commend your team for this suggestion. I support it. The only thing I would encourage is that when this is implemented and we're beginning the Singapore math, the model drawing for these students, for teachers always recognize a student that is excelling in this and deserves a seat in AIG. And for teachers to continue on this new level 5 path, but if they identify a student who is excelling in this, to have the recommendation to move into AIG.
And our long-term plan as well, because we don't want, this isn't just about 4th and 5th grade students. So once we get through developing this advanced math curriculum, we want to then begin to develop extended curriculum in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade.
Great.
So then that helps to develop them
For 3rd grade.
exactly.
If it's good, let's do it for everybody.
That's part of our plan as well, because teachers need those resources when they do notice those students. It's not going to be as simple to identify those students as it is in 4th and 5th grade because they're level 5s because of the EOG. But, I think that's PD that we can also provide. How do you recognize these students? What are some characteristics in kindergarten that you can notice?
Because on the matrix is a teacher recommendation. So with this being said, and all the phone calls and emails we've received this summer after their children got their scores back, I would just, the 3rd piece you've offered, step 1, step 2, I would say 3rd is identification.
Speaking of AIG, where are we in the upping our aren't we our 3-year window up? We have to resubmit our requirements for AIG to DPI. What's the timeline on that?
Yes, sir. This year we are rewriting the AIG plan, and that committee is being formed, and we have a plan in place that expands the whole year of rewriting that plan for submission at the end of the school year over the summer.
So it would go into effect fall of 2019?
That is correct.
And will that come to committee?
Bring it to us.
Yes, it will.
Recommendations
Yes.
and stuff? Wonderful.
I would encourage that group to, if possible, increase the weighting of subjective items such as teacher recommendations. That, somebody that falls 1 point below the COGAT so they don't get in, that doesn't make sense. So that's my 2 cents for.
Especially if we know the kids who didn't make a level 5 are in AIG. That still disturbs me. So I want to make sure that these level 5 kids, this is a great opportunity for them. And again, if we have a third step here for identifying students that might be ready for that recommendation.
Give yourself enough room.
Standards for AIG. Thank you, Dr. Crawford.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're good.
I haven't talked about the long-term plan, but is that a note?
Yeah.
Let's I'd say let's come back to that.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you for what you're doing. I think this is a
Thank you.
great start.
Thank
Thank you. Okay. IB expansion update.
Okay, also in our last curriculum committee meeting, we talked about IB expansion. We had several elements to that, and we really narrowed that down into number one is looking at Marvin Ridge High School expanding down to the 9th and 10th grade, and then also continue on just the research on what that this program might look like at another school, primarily at Porter Ridge High School, but kind of continuing that path of kind of feeling out, putting our feelers out there to see what that would look like. And so here to kind of talk about that is Ms. Garner.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So an update just on where we are with Marvin Ridge High School. I've met with the principal and the IB coordinator there on 2 different occasions since our last meeting. And we are in the planning stage for looking at how we're going to open up an application for rising 9th graders for this coming school year. For a couple years, they'll be inviting rising 9th graders as well as rising 11th graders until those current 9th graders get through. We've kind of put a calendar together, and what they're looking at doing in October, they have a video that their students have put together that talks about that they've put together at Marvin Ridge, features some of their students, features some of their graduates, and talks about why they might be interested in IB. They're going to show that to all middle schools during the month of October. In October and November, they're going to do a road show to visit all of the high schools. And one of the changes that we're going to make for this year is that instead of targeting a specific group of students at those high schools, we're going to meet with every sophomore. And so Ms. Arendt is going to request that the meeting be held in the auditorium. And if kids are interested and they haven't met the prerequisites, we can work with those students who are interested to get those prerequisites before their junior year, whether that is shifting their schedule in the spring, if they need to double up on math, if they need to add an additional language, or if that is taking some of those classes over the summer to get those prerequisites. And they've done that in the past for students who have been interested, but you know, in looking at that. So that would be specifically for recruiting for the junior class, because they're kind of doing that double recruiting. Ms. Arendt is going to provide a script for principals to send a Connect Ed message to all of their families so that parents are aware when these meetings are happening. Our plan is that we've looked at her schedule to see, because she is teaching classes as well. So we're looking at her schedule to figure out which days she can do those road shows. We've put a sign-up sheet together so that high school principals will be able to pick the day that they would like to have her come and speak to their students. In November and December, she is going to hold parent information sessions. She's going to do 2 different ones, one at the end of November, one in the first 2 weeks of December. One will more target the rising 9th grade parents, and one will more target the rising 11th grade parents. But she said it would be appropriate for parents really to attend either one. They are going to hold that at Marvin Ridge High School. And we debated about the idea of where we hold that. And, you know, do we do those interest meetings out in the community to draw more interest? But she said, you know, one of the big pieces is she wants to make sure that families recognize how far the drive is and where the school is located, as that factors into their decision. So they're going to hold those interest meetings at Marvin Ridge, and they're going to go out and speak to the sophomores at their own school. So that'll be an opportunity for them to be in the community.
Well, the drive really doesn't matter because we're going to provide transportation. At least this year we are.
Right,
but
absolutely.
according to the students that were accepted this year, they did
accept
not take advantage
but
of the
it's still there.
transportation.
Well, and even for the parents to be involved with the school
To know.
and to just understand where the school is and to be able to visit and see what it looks like.
Yeah, see the school.
Exactly.
Know what you're getting yourself into.
That's right. And I believe in the past when they've done their interest meetings, they provide a tour of the school and things like that.
Good.
We did uncover 2 additional students who have accepted the transportation as well, just so that you know that was a big piece. And then in December, working in cooperation with Director of Career Readiness, Robert Filter, the High School Programs Expo will be held in December, and they will have a booth at that High School Programs Expo like they did last year. So that is where we are with Marvin Ridge. We will be developing an application for those rising 9th graders that looks a little bit different than rising 11th graders. Okay. So at the last curriculum meeting, we also talked a little bit about Porter Ridge High School. Dr. Facin asked for permission to continue to investigate. And so what we have done since then is we've had a meeting with Jonathan Bradley from International Baccalaureate, with Dr. Facin, and Dr. Harris was there. really looking at that timeline and what it would look like. And one of the things that we learned at that meeting was that the current 8th graders would be the first cohort that would be eligible to earn the diploma through the IB if Porter Ridge started that process this spring. And that's the earliest that we could get that going. And I know that Dr. Facin was a little bit disappointed because she was hoping to have something in place for the current 9th graders, but it actually lines up kind of nicely with the timeline for Marvin Ridge High School, because then we'd be saying that we're targeting current 8th graders of both schools. And so it really makes it that there's 2 different opportunities based on where you live in the district to start this program in 9th grade and have access to the diploma program as a graduate. So the goal for them, if they're going to go down this road, would be to submit that initial application for candidacy in April. And that's really the first step that gets them access to some of the curriculum materials so that they can start exploring that.
This April or next April?
April of 2019. So they'd have to submit the application, and that starts the process.
So how can students apply if we're in the middle of applying?
So this would be for the diploma program, which wouldn't take effect until those students are in 11th grade. So the 9th graders that would be going through the process would be pre-IB, not in any official capacity. And they can't actually teach any of the official courses until they've been authorized, which won't happen until our current 8th graders are actually juniors. So that authorization visit would happen 2 years after you apply for candidacy. So it's a quite lengthy process. There's a lot of training that's involved, and there's a lot of curriculum writing that's involved. The discussion with Porter Ridge was a little bit different, I think, than where Marvin Ridge's IB program is, and I think that's fine. In some schools, and this is something that Porter Ridge was interested in, students who are not formally seeking the IB diploma have had access to IB courses. And that's something that Porter Ridge would like to investigate, is having a couple of different courses that have open access for students. So if you were interested in taking, the IB Theory of Knowledge course that looks at how you learn, and it's just really kind of an interesting course for kids to take, that would potentially be open to any student in the school who wanted to take that. Those are the courses that would be available, and I don't have the specific list of them, would be the courses that are 1-year courses. Those are the ones that they usually open up to non-IB students. The other thing that Porter Ridge is interested in, just because of their population and who they would try to target with this, is that they would like to look at two different IB programs at the same time. So IB has the diploma program, which is what Marvin Ridge High School has, and Porter Ridge would like to launch that. But they would also like to do an additional program that IB has just started in the last 5 or 6 years, I think, that's the career program. And it's a slightly different take. It's a smaller additional fee. It's almost like doing an add-on to do that. But what it allows students to do is to identify that they're going down the career program pathway, and it aligns with the career pathways that we have at our schools. So what Porter Ridge would do is look at what courses and what career pathways the students are taking. For example, they could look at their culinary academy if they have a large cohort of students, and then they could align their career program coursework for IB with what they're already doing in CTE. So the students take 2 official IB courses, and they do a very unique capstone project. And I can't remember the exact term that they do, but they do some type of capstone that the students work on. And part of that has to be through a world language. So, not just taking a world language course, but looking at, if you're in culinary arts, it might be helpful if you're working in a kitchen to know Spanish. And so they would incorporate some of that into their project to bring that global focus, since this is IB. So that's something that they'd be interested in doing, and really having 2 different tracks for different groups of students. Some who would be interested really in leaving high school and going to that rigorous 4-year school, and some who might be interested in that, but also may be interested in pursuing a career or a 2-year degree to then pursue a career. And this would set them up for success.
So this could, one thing we need to think about, if they're interested in that program and we're still committed to offering transportation, that's kind of going towards, well, then we're going to have to offer transportation to the CTE because they're going into the IB program while in that culinary class. we're going to offer you transportation to the IB program, but we're not offering you transportation to get to the culinary class. So you're kind of walking down that road. Don't
And
you
I think those are definitely
Yeah.
considerations.
And I think part of the discussion we had last month was also wanting to see what the application pool would look like this year at Marvin Ridge for 9th and 10th. And I believe I had asked for a report to see where our last pool, what schools they were coming from. I don't think I've seen that yet. So we were interested to see where were those applications coming from. So we still need to see that.
Okay, I have
But I think our intent from our last conversation was let's open this up to rising 9th graders at Marvin Ridge, see how much interest there is in the county, and then decide if we're ready to open this up at another location.
I'd say that's still in process for some time, I believe, this semester or early next, because of the opening of school and then being out for weather and those kinds of things. I don't think either principals have had the chance to go to the feeder middle schools yet to survey those 8th graders, but that will be done to try to figure out what will the pool of interest look like.
But I just want to remind everyone, what kind of data we were hoping to see in order to make a consideration in April.
And I'll take that one step further. Can the IB program be successful at Porter Ridge if it doesn't draw anyone or nearly anyone in from another school? In other words, if at Porter Ridge, the model is only going to be, it's going to be basically Porter Ridge students. They're not coming from Piedmont. They're not coming from Sun Valley to go to Porter Ridge to be in the IB program. Can it be successful there? If it's just an internal program, can it be successful? Do we have enough demand that we can fill a cohort to be successful?
Well, I see a lot of heads nodding, and I just have to say, until we see the data, and until we see how many kids actually applied last year, I don't think I'm not sure that I'm convinced the interest warrants 2 high schools if we don't have enough applicants to fill the seats at 1 high school. So we need to see data.
Okay. One of the next steps is to schedule parent interest meetings at Porter Ridge to see, and that was looking at the December timeline to align with when Marvin Ridge is going to do theirs. Are you still okay with Porter Ridge moving ahead with a parent interest meeting this year?
A parent interest meeting to find out interest.
Correct.
But until we get the reports we've asked for, I'm not prepared to say that we're moving forward in April.
I think we want to feel comfortable that the demand is there and the demand is not being met when they understand.
Because I don't think
potential
all the
of having a
seats,
program.
to my knowledge, there are empty seats at Marvin Ridge, and then a lot of the applicants that were accepted this year did not accept all those seats.
So Marvin Ridge, I mean, they have full classrooms. They have 25-ish students. They had room for more. I think if everybody had accepted the applications, they would have had to have more teachers trained, and they would have had to figure that out this year had everyone accepted. I don't know that I think they would have room for a couple of more students. But their classrooms are
And
are
I think
around
what
25.
we acknowledged was that if we opened it, it's very hard to make a student transfer high schools in 11th grade.
Yes.
And so I think what we all agreed last month is let's open this up at 9th grade, rising 9th graders, and let's see if we can get more buy-in at that stage than asking a student to transfer halfway through their high school career. And so that's kind of where I thought we were, was let's see what the interest would be.
We are.
Okay.
Okay.
And absolutely, we need to have parent interest meetings. We need to know if there's interest.
Okay. So if the plan is, the hope is the application of Porter Ridge High School in the spring. I'm not sure what the spring means. Is that
think it was an
Right.
Before
application
spring.
deadline,
By
right?
April 1st.
By April 1st. Okay. So here we are, basically at the 1st of October. We've got to have the data Ms. Merrill mentioned and results and feedback that Dr. Facen has in the Porter Ridge cluster in order to make an informed decision to move forward on our application process. Now, this is just me personally speaking. I would love that any of our high schools that wants to implement an IB program and feels that they can fill it with their own students in their own school, I say have at it. But we're still at step one, and we're still taking baby steps on the IB program before we're ready to go full go. So I'm hoping that they can show us data and good, hard feedback from their meetings that there is definitely demand to support not only loading up Marvin Ridge High School, but to move to another location.
Okay, so when you say have at it, I would challenge you as the chair of finance, who's had to work with the county commissioners where we've already been told that our budget's going to be cut.
I'll
So
tell
I
you,
think we need to be real careful at have at it times 9 clusters.
how much does it
So
take to apply for IB program?
The
at a high school?
application is not the
And
problem. The
implementation.
application was not significant. What did you say? 3,000?
4,000.
4,000?
To implement a program at a high school. How,
No, that's not
Oh.
what she said. Application.
No, I said
Right now, we're just
implementation.
Waiting on the data, right?
Correct.
teach.
All right, so
It does not cost 4,000 to open an IB program.
No, I understand. I said implementation.
I don't think we'll be ready to come back to this committee until probably January at the earliest. Once we
January.
have the data from the December interest, the surveys from the kids to see what the interest is. And I don't think I don't think we should come back until we have that information.
Okay. We'll see you in January.
And if you have all that information, like the application, please forward it to all 3 of us. Thank you.
And me too.
What'd you say, Christina?
She wants it too.
I said, and me too.
Okay, thank you.
You said all 3 of us.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for that reminder. All 4 committee members, please. Okay, that brings us to Miller's Crew update.
Okay. Also, last meeting, we addressed the idea of Miller's Crew, which is working with several groups within our EC department, and we wanted to gather more information. And of course, last time we wanted to push some things through our legal department because of the facilities being used in that. And so to give that update of where we are in this process, I've got both Dr. Nolan and Ms. Little here again to kind of go over what has transpired over the last month.
Please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We want to let you know that we are moving forward with the grant process. The grant process covers the cafe piece that we talked about last time. And Mr. Molnar said that the grant has not been approved from BB&T, but that he will know soon, but he's not concerned about that piece of it being funded. He feels that it's going to be funded. And Mrs. Little checked with him again this morning about something else and asked about that. So he's still moving forward with the grant. Once the grant's funded, the Miller's Crew and our Union County Public School staff will collaborate to purchase the equipment needed for the cafe. And then any remaining funds from that grant would be used to grow the cafe over time. We have found out from the legal piece of it that the location for the pending cafe is still available to us. Signpost Ministries is leasing the building where they are located, and they continue to have permission from the building owner to allow for for-profit and nonprofit vendors, organizations to be there. The City of Monroe has approved the use of the space as a student-run cafe, so there's not an issue with permits. Because of the zoning ordinances where the building is located, and the regulations that are applicable to the building in the business district, it prevents religious services from occurring or proselytizing by the building owner. And, that was one of the issues that legal was concerned about. So we have been assured that our students will not be preached to, they will not be proselytized. So that's not an issue, even though Signpost Ministries is who we would be working with.
Okay.
So we're moving forward with that. We, as soon as we have the approval for that grant, then legal will work on the agreement with Signpost Ministries saying, listing the equipment that will be purchased, that we own it, all of those pieces that would go with that agreement having to do with liability and things. Now, the other section or the other segment of this has to do with outfitting our other high schools with a station. And so Mrs. Little's going to talk about that.
So at our last meeting, you also graciously agreed to match the $5,000 for opening the cafe. So we went back and did just a review, and this is just an update information for you, is that we have 8 high schools that have our transition to adulthood program. 3 of those schools have 2 classrooms in them. In speaking with Miller's Crew, if we were looking at setting up workstations, they normally do 1 workstation per high school. So that would be actually 8 workstations. And in looking at the workstations, if you're going to do a full cafe, it's definitely that $5,000 for each one. However, I spoke with him. I said, what I'd like to do, the vision would be if we could have a pre-voke station set up in the classrooms. And that would be approximately $500 per classroom. So that worked out well with the match of the $5,000 that you all were giving us. The other additional information to that is that if when he looks at our space that we are currently proposing for the cafe that's in the community at Signpost Ministries, then when he looks at that space and assess it for the cafe and the equipment that may be needed, any monies left over from that grant is completely ours. And that money could be utilized in addition for, of course, maintenance of the equipment, additional supplies as needed. And the same thing could be for the classrooms as well. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, are you proposing, would you like to move forward with the high school classrooms and hold off on the cafe until you have all the I's dotted and T's crossed and the grants awarded? Okay, I'll make the motion. We move forward and recommend to the full board the implementation of the high school 8 workstations and to bring back to the committee and the board for approval then for full implementation of the cafe when you have the legal and acceptance of the grant application. How's that?
Excellent.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Christina, are you there? Okay, I'm gonna say 3-0.
Okay.
It motion passes.
Tried to say something.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you heard it? Okay. 4-0. We're gonna say 4-0.
Yes, I voted aye.
We keep losing you, sorry.
And I believe if I'm correct, this is scheduled for the consent agenda for Tuesday night?
Yes, both Miller's Crew and Street Safe are on the agenda.
Consent.
Consent.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the next meeting date.
Our next meeting date is October 25th and right here at the PDC 202, 3 and 4.
At 9 o'clock.
Yes, ma'am.
And actions to go to the Board of Education will be Street Safe and Miller's Crew. Everything else today was informational, so I'll accept any comments, questions. Okay, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.